Good evening, and welcome back to our quiet corner of stories and slow reflections. Tonight, we are opening a question that has followed humanity for thousands of years. A question whispered in temples, written in ancient texts, and carried in the hearts of people from every corner of the world. Who, or what, is God? It is a question that sounds simple, almost childlike, yet the more we look at it, the deeper it becomes. Every culture, every era, and every belief system has tried to answer it in its own way. And interestingly, even though their images and traditions may differ, most of them arrive at a similar understanding, that God, whatever form people imagine, is not just a human being, but something larger, broader, and beyond the limits of physical life. Some traditions describe God as a creator who shaped the world with intention. Others imagine many gods, each guiding a part of nature or human experience. There are beliefs where God is a quiet presence woven into the universe itself, an essence rather than a figure. And there are philosophies that see the idea of God as a way for us to reach for meaning when the world feels too vast to navigate alone. But no matter which belief we explore, one theme keeps returning: the idea that the divine is something more than human, something not bound by our bodies, our limitations, or our brief moment in time. So tonight, we will walk gently through these perspectives, not to prove or disprove anything, but simply to understand why so many cultures, separated by oceans and centuries, came to view God as something beyond the human shape, a quiet, shared intuition that the world might hold more than what we can see. As we move deeper into this quiet exploration, we come to one of the most influential perspectives in the world, the Christian understanding of God. In this tradition, God is not seen as a figure made of flesh or bound by the rules that guide human life. Instead, God is described as the creator, the source from which everything begins, from the smallest seed to the wide sweep of the universe. In Christian thought, God exists outside the boundaries that shape our everyday experience. Time, which feels so steady and inescapable to us, is not a limitation for God. Space, which tells us where things begin and end, does not confine him either. The idea is that God is not part of the universe in the way we are. Rather, the universe is something that rests within God's design. This perspective offers a comforting sense of order and intention. For many believers, the thought that a creator stands beyond all physical limits gives life a kind of structure, a feeling that existence is not random, but shaped with purpose. It is why many Christian writings describe God as eternal, unchanging, and present everywhere at once, not as a distant figure watching from afar, but as a constant presence woven into the fabric of existence. Whether one follows this belief or simply studies it from the outside, it carries a certain poetic weight. It suggests that life is part of a larger story, one that stretches far beyond the boundaries of human perception. And in a way, this idea connects back to the universal theme we opened with, the sense that the divine, however we define it, reaches beyond the limits of the human form. As we continue this gentle journey, we arrive at one of the most unique ideas within Christianity, an idea that blends the divine with the human in a way no other major tradition quite mirrors. In Christian belief, Jesus is understood as God in human form. It does not mean that God became human in the ordinary sense, or that the divine suddenly turned into a biological being. Instead, Christians believe that God chose to appear in a way people could understand, using human life as a bridge between the infinite and the everyday. In this view, Jesus walked the same roads, felt the same weather, and experienced the same joys and struggles that shape human life. But beneath that familiar appearance, his nature was still considered divine, something far beyond the limits of the physical world. The body was a vessel, a way for people to see and connect with a message that might otherwise feel too distant or too abstract. This idea places Jesus in a very unique position. He is not simply a teacher or a prophet, but a link between the human experience and the divine source behind it. His actions, words, and choices are seen as reflections of a deeper nature, one not defined by muscles, cells, or mortality, but by a spiritual essence that reaches beyond time and space. For many believers, this concept brings comfort. It suggests that the divine understands human life from the inside, that whatever challenges we face, they are not unknown to the one who created us. And even for those outside the tradition, the idea carries a quiet symbolism. Sometimes the most profound truths need a human face in order to be heard. As we move from the Christian tradition into the broader world of ancient beliefs, we find a landscape shaped by many gods rather than one, a worldview called polytheism. These religions, found across Greece, Egypt, India, Scandinavia, and countless other cultures, often portray their gods with human-like forms. They walk, they speak, they celebrate, and sometimes they even express emotions familiar to us. Yet beneath those familiar shapes lies an important distinction. These gods are not human at all. The human-like appearance serves a purpose. It makes the divine easier to understand, easier to remember, and easier to tell stories about. When a god carries a thunderbolt or wears a crown of sunlight, the image stays in the imagination. But this appearance is symbolic, not literal. The gods of these traditions are believed to stand beyond human life, able to influence the winds, guide the harvest, or shape the fate of kingdoms. In many polytheistic myths, the gods move between worlds, shift forms, and interact with nature in ways no human body could withstand. Their stories are filled with transformation, journeys through unseen realms, and moments of power that exceed anything physical. These elements remind us that beneath the human-like surface is a being woven from something more mysterious than flesh and bone. What is interesting is how these myths reflect the hopes and fears of the communities that created them. Each god embodies a force like the sea, the sun, love, or wisdom, turning natural and emotional experiences into characters people can talk to, pray to, or celebrate. So even though the gods may look like us in art or sculpture, they represent ideas much larger than any person could contain. As we continue this quiet exploration, it is important to pause and consider the perspective of science. Science, at its heart, is a method for understanding the natural world, how things work, why patterns occur, and how we can predict or control outcomes. It measures, observes, tests, and repeats. But when it comes to God, science reaches a natural limit. Science can describe the vastness of the universe, the movement of stars, the origins of life, and the intricate patterns of nature. It can explain how the heart beats, how plants grow, and how human behavior might be influenced by biology or environment. But none of these observations can confirm or deny the existence of a past, divine being. God, by most definitions, exists beyond the laws that science studies. God is not a phenomenon that can be captured in an experiment, measured on a scale, or replicated in a lab. Moreover, science does not address intentions or purposes behind the universe. It can tell us how something happens, but not why it happens, in the sense of a meaningful plan or ultimate reason. Questions like, why are we here? Or is there a purpose behind existence? Lie outside the realm of scientific proof. They enter philosophy, theology, and personal reflection. For many, this limitation is not a frustration, but a space for wonder. It is the room where mystery, faith, and contemplation can exist. It is where people can pause, think, and imagine that perhaps the universe is more than just its parts. That there is an essence beyond what we can measure, an order or presence that science cannot fully touch. In this way, science and belief do not have to be in conflict. One explains the workings of the world, while the other explores the meaning, the unseen, and the questions that have guided humanity for millennia. As we step into the visual symbols of faith, the cross stands out as the most recognizable of all in Christianity. Almost every church, every sacred space, and many homes display it in some form. But why does this simple structure, a vertical and horizontal beam intersecting, carry such profound meaning? The cross represents the moment of sacrifice, the point where human suffering and divine purpose intersect. In Christian belief, it is the instrument on which Jesus was crucified, an event that is considered central to the faith. For believers, it is not just a reminder of pain or death. It is a symbol of hope, forgiveness, and the possibility of redemption. The cross visually conveys the idea that suffering can be transformed into something meaningful, that loss can be connected to love, and that life itself can be renewed. It also functions as a bridge between the human and the divine. While God is considered beyond human comprehension, the cross provides a tangible representation of the divine taking part in human life. It is both a memorial and a teaching tool, a quiet invitation for reflection on the nature of compassion, selflessness, and moral courage. Across different Christian traditions, the cross is depicted in various ways. Some are empty, highlighting resurrection and new life, while others include the figure of Jesus, emphasizing the depth of his sacrifice. Regardless of form, the symbol draws attention to the key message that love, sacrifice, and hope are intertwined in a way that transcends ordinary human experience. Ultimately, the cross is more than a piece of wood or metal. It is a symbol that invites viewers to pause, to consider, and to connect with ideas far larger than themselves. A silent reflection on the intersection of suffering, meaning, and grace. As we look more closely at Christian symbolism, one detail stands out in Catholic churches: the crucifix, showing Jesus on the cross. Unlike a simple empty cross, this depiction brings the story of Jesus' life, suffering, and ultimate sacrifice into a tangible form. It is not meant to shock or frighten, but to help the faithful reflect on the profound depth of love and commitment that the story conveys. In Catholic belief, Jesus' suffering on the cross is central to understanding God's compassion. The crucifix reminds worshippers that the divine chose to enter the human experience fully, sharing in pain, struggle, and even mortality. By seeing the figure of Jesus, believers are invited to meditate on themes of empathy, forgiveness, and the courage to endure hardship. It serves as a visual lesson that suffering can have purpose, that personal trials are not meaningless, and that love can be expressed through sacrifice. This representation also helps connect abstract ideas such as divine love or salvation with human experience. The figure of Jesus bridges the gap between infinite divinity and finite humanity. It is a way for worshippers to internalize spiritual truths, to remember that even in moments of vulnerability, there is hope and meaning. Across centuries, artists have created crucifixes in many styles, from simple and austere to richly detailed and ornate, but the central message remains the same. Jesus' sacrifice is a reminder of the values at the heart of Christian teaching, inviting quiet reflection and deeper understanding. For Catholics, the crucifix is not just decoration. It is a focal point for meditation, prayer, and contemplation, a symbol of the enduring connection between the human and the divine. As we move through the diversity of Christian traditions, it is interesting to note a different approach seen in many Protestant churches. Unlike the Catholic crucifix, which depicts Jesus on the cross, the Protestant cross is typically bare. This choice reflects a distinct theological focus: the resurrection, hope, and new life. Rather than solely the suffering and death of Jesus, the empty cross emphasizes that death is not the final chapter. For Protestants, the story of Jesus' crucifixion is inseparable from his resurrection. By removing the figure of Jesus from the cross, the symbol points worshippers toward life, renewal, and the promise of eternal hope. It serves as a visual reminder that suffering, while real and significant, is not the end. there is a path to transformation and redemption. This approach also shifts attention from the historical event of crucifixion to its spiritual significance. The empty cross encourages contemplation on themes like forgiveness, victory over sin, and the enduring presence of divine love. It invites believers to consider the ways that hope and new beginnings can emerge even from the most difficult experiences. Artistically, the simplicity of the empty cross can have a profound effect. Its stark, uncluttered lines draw focus and invite personal reflection. It is a quiet, open-ended symbol, leaving space for worshipers to project their own experiences, struggles, and aspirations onto it. In essence, the empty cross is a symbol of optimism, resilience, and divine promise. It reminds all who see it that life continues, that grace is available, and that the divine presence is not defined by death, but by the enduring potential for renewal and love. As we continue exploring Christian symbolism, it is important to remember why the crucifixion holds such a central place in faith. At first glance, the image of Jesus on the cross may seem somber or even frightening. Yet, in its essence, the crucifixion is not intended to evoke fear. Instead, it serves as a profound symbol of love, forgiveness, and hope. In Christian belief, Jesus' death was an act of selfless love, undertaken for the benefit of humanity. The image of his suffering on the cross is a visual representation of that ultimate commitment. It reminds believers that even in moments of great pain, there is the potential for compassion, sacrifice, and transformative love. The crucifixion becomes a story not just of suffering, but of care for others, of empathy, and of moral courage. Forgiveness is another key aspect of this symbol. By willingly enduring suffering, Jesus exemplifies the idea that forgiveness is possible, even in situations that seem unbearable. It encourages people to reflect on their own relationships and actions, to consider how they might act with greater compassion, understanding, and patience. Finally, the crucifixion points toward hope. It is part of a larger narrative that includes resurrection, renewal, and the promise of life beyond hardship. For believers, it conveys the message that struggles and losses, while real, are not meaningless. There is the possibility of growth, redemption, and a renewed sense of purpose. In this way, the crucifixion is less about terror and more about inspiration. It is a quiet reminder that love, forgiveness, and hope are enduring, even in the face of life's greatest challenges. It invites contemplation, reflection, and a deeper understanding of human and divine connection. As we move beyond religious imagery and into philosophical reflection, the concept of God takes on a slightly different shape. Here, God is not thought of as a person, a body, or even a figure to imagine in human terms. Instead, God is seen as a non-material, supreme being, a presence that exists beyond the physical world and the limitations of space and time. Philosophers across many traditions have explored this idea. They describe God as the ultimate source of reality, a fundamental principle or essence from which everything arises. In this view, God is not subject to birth, aging, or death. God is not composed of matter, nor is God confined by any physical law. Instead, God exists as the foundation of existence itself, the origin of order, consciousness, and purpose. Thinking of God in this way invites a shift in perspective. It challenges us to look past appearances, to consider reality in ways that are not tied to senses or measurements. It also allows a kind of universality, whether one follows a particular religion or not. The idea of a non-material, supreme being can inspire awe, reflection, and a sense of connection to something greater. For many, this philosophical approach provides a bridge between human understanding and mystery. It emphasizes that God, if understood as such, is not a human-like figure to fear or worship in literal form, but a concept to contemplate, a presence that informs our understanding of life, morality, and the universe. In this quiet reflection, we can appreciate the elegance of imagining God not as a being confined to the world, but as a supreme, intangible essence, inviting contemplation, wonder, and a gentle curiosity about the nature of existence itself. As we consider the perspective of science alongside philosophy and theology, another idea emerges. If God exists, God would exist outside the limits of physical matter. Science studies the universe through observation, measurement, and experimentation. It explores what is tangible: atoms, molecules, energy, and forces. But the concept of God, as commonly understood, lies beyond all of these measurable elements. From this viewpoint, God is not made of cells, bones, or blood. God does not follow the laws of biology, chemistry, or physics as humans understand them. God would exist independently of space and time, unaffected by the physical constraints that govern life on earth. This does not make God less real to those who believe. Rather, it situates the divine as something fundamentally different from any material entity we know. Thinking of God in this way allows room for mystery, imagination, and reflection. It invites us to consider existence beyond what is visible or measurable, and to contemplate the origins of life and the universe in ways that stretch the mind. It also emphasizes the idea that divinity is not bound by the limitations of human experience. God's presence, if it exists, would be a form of existence that transcends matter, offering a perspective that science cannot fully grasp or define. This understanding does not conflict with faith. Instead, it can complement it by highlighting that the divine may operate on a plane entirely separate from the observable world. In this sense, God becomes a symbol of the infinite, a presence beyond our senses, and a reminder that some questions may remain open, inviting quiet contemplation and awe. As we reach the conclusion of this quiet exploration, one central theme becomes clear. Across religions, philosophies, and perspectives, God is consistently understood as something beyond human form. God is not confined to the limitations of flesh, nor is God subject to the passage of time or the laws of the physical world. Instead, God is a spiritual, supernatural, or transcendent being, an existence that stretches beyond what we can see or fully comprehend. Different traditions approach this in their own ways. Some see God as a personal creator who engages with humanity, offering guidance and care. Others describe God as an ultimate principle, a source of all existence, or a fundamental essence behind the universe. Some traditions portray the divine in human-like imagery to help believers relate, while others emphasize invisibility and transcendence to highlight God's otherworldly nature. Yet the unifying idea remains: God is fundamentally different from human beings, existing on a plane that is greater, broader, and more mysterious. Understanding God in this way invites reflection rather than fear. It reminds us that life, the universe, and consciousness may hold dimensions beyond our immediate perception. It encourages curiosity, contemplation, and respect for the mysteries that surround us. In this quiet meditation, we see that God, in any interpretation, represents an enduring connection between humanity and something larger, something infinite, intangible, and ultimately beyond human comprehension. In the end, whether one approaches God through faith, philosophy, or personal reflection, the divine stands as a symbol of the unseen, a reminder that the universe may be more profound than what our senses reveal. God is not a human being, but a presence that invites wonder, introspection, and a sense of belonging within a world that extends far beyond ourselves. As we gently close this journey through questions of God, divinity, and the mysteries beyond human understanding, we are left with a sense of quiet reflection. Throughout our exploration, we have seen that God is not a human being, nor a figure confined by the limits of flesh or time. Instead, God appears across cultures and traditions as a transcendent presence, whether as a creator, a supreme principle, or a divine essence guiding the universe. This journey reminds us of the enduring human desire to understand, to seek meaning, and to connect with something greater than ourselves. Across centuries and continents, people have looked to symbols, stories, and philosophy to express the inexpressible, to approach the unseen, and to find hope in the face of uncertainty. Whether through the image of a cross, the stories of gods, or the quiet reflection on the nature of existence, these explorations invite contemplation, curiosity, and respect for the unknown. And so, as we close this chapter, let us carry forward a gentle awareness that life may be full of questions without immediate answers, and that wonder, humility, and reflection are as much a part of our journey as knowledge itself. Thank you for joining me tonight. Take a deep breath, let the thoughts settle, and carry a quiet sense of curiosity and peace with you until we meet again. Good night, and may your path be filled with insight and calm.